Hit him up on Twitter at BWWeber for up-to-the-minute sports info and a little more of just about everything else. We cover it all. This is NBC Sports Radio and NBCSportsRadio.com. Every day is game day.
Brian Weber back with you. 855-323-4622 is the number to call. 855-323-4NBC. You can tweet at me, BW Weber. It is the most wonderful time of the year in the sports memorabilia business. I'm pleased to be joined by Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily. Rich, what are the details of a very famous Babe Ruth autograph that's about to come up for auction when the Babe promised to hit a home run for a sick child?
Yeah, this just kind of came on the market within the last few days. It's a pretty interesting story, and if you're a real serious baseball fan, you probably already know it. But in the summer of 1926, there was this 11-year-old kid named Johnny Sylvester. He lived in New Jersey, fell off a horse, and then got kicked in the head by it. He developed a serious infection, just could not snap out of this spiral of illness, and finally that fall, a member of his family sent a telegram to the Yankees because Johnny was a huge fan, and they called him the Babe Ruth Kid. Actually, he played baseball. The Yankees were getting ready for the World Series in St. Louis, but 2 autographed balls were sent back to New Jersey for Johnny, one of them signed by the Cardinals and one of them by several members of the Yankees, including Ruth, who added a little note on there famously called, and he wrote, "I'll knock a homer for you." And Ruth, in fact, did hit 3 home runs in one game, and he actually kept in touch with this kid, sending him another fairly lengthy letter, then actually came and visited him after the Yankees returned home. They wound up losing that series, but he stopped in and saw this 11-year-old Johnny, whose health, as the story goes, did actually improve as time went on after this visit from Ruth and getting those autograph balls. And there's a famous picture of those two actually talking. It got a lot of play in the press, this story, and that's kind of how the legend was born. Babe promising to hit this home run and actually delivering, and Johnny getting better.
Chatting with Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily. Rich, I read that the Babe wasn't the only big-name athlete who reached out to Johnny. Who else did he hear from?
Red Grange, who, of course, was hugely famous across the country as a football player at the time, sent him a letter, and so did Bill Tilden, the big tennis player at the time. Both of them sent letters and autographs, and I think he got a football from Grange as well. I think Tilden sent him a racket, and those were all in this collection that has stayed in the Sylvester family, and now his son is auctioning it through Gray Flannel Auctions here coming up. The auction starts in about 4 weeks.
Do we know what happened to little Johnny later in his life?
Yeah, Johnny actually became pretty successul. He was a lieutenant, I believe, in World War II, and then got out and ran a company for many years. And he died, I think, probably about 10 years ago or so. I'm not sure exactly when, but he did pretty well for himself and recovered fully thanks to the Babe, I guess.
It's all about the Babe. Who knew he had the healing powers? We're chatting with Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily. When is the auction itself, and what do you expect the Babe Ruth autograph will go for?
The auction starts January 20th, and it runs through February 6th. They have not given a pre-sale estimate. Some auction companies will do this, and some won't. Gray Flannel doesn't do that, but they have started the reserve bid at $50,000. It'll reach that easily, probably on the first day or two. Final selling price is probably going to depend on how much publicity it gets between now and the week of the auction, but I would guess that this ball will sell for well into 6 figures, and maybe even better than that if the right people get involved who get a look at this and want it.
We're chatting with Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily here on NBC Sports Radio. Brian Weber with you. Rich, let's expand the conversation. Every industry has its ups and downs. How hard was the sports memorabilia business hit in recent years by the economic downturn?
Well, it didn't help. I think a lot of the wealthy people that play with this type of memorabilia, that the stuff that sells for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, were probably hurt a little bit by it, and so they kind of backed off a little bit. But generally, it's been healthy. And people say, well, baseball cards are dead and nobody collects anymore, and that's really a misnomer. The current card industry has been hurt a little bit because obviously it's not really aimed that much at kids anymore, and so you have a lot of pricey packs and things like that. And when the economy gets tough, there aren't a lot of people willing to fork over $100, $250 for a pack of cards. Although you can get some of the lower brands at a smaller level. But now it's bounced back a lot, and really the vintage card market, the really high grade, older vintage cards of guys like Ruth and Gehrig and Mantle, they've done very, very well, better than in many cases than a lot of your traditional investments. And memorabilia the same way. I mean, we just had a Babe Ruth jersey sold last year, circa 1920, through SCP auctions that went for $4.4 million. So there's definitely, and the Honus Wagner card, of course, everybody knows the T206 Wagner. We've had record-setting sales. Every time one of those comes up for sale in an auction, it sells for more than it did before, regardless of the condition, because most of those cards, those Wagner cards, are not in very good condition. They've been beat up and sitting in, they just didn't survive very well throughout the course of history, and there's only, probably less than 100 of those around. But it doesn't matter. If it's rare and it involves a big name, has a good story behind it, the market is solid.
Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily, our guest here on NBC Sports Radio. Rich, how big of an issue is forgery and fraud in your business? It seems like technology could help somebody fake stuff a lot more easily than they could in the past.
Yeah, and they're getting better at it because some of this stuff is worth a lot of money. It's always a problem. I think it's a better situation now than it was, say, if you remember the Operation Bullpen, where the FBI got involved, and they're still actually involved in investigating some issues in this hobby. But I think it's better now because you do have some of the authentication companies who may not catch everything, but most things that are submitted there, you at least have another third party looking at it, and hopefully has enough exemplars in their file to where they can weed out some of the bad stuff. So I think it's safer now, but you really have to be prepared and kind of be your own authenticator and do a lot of research. If you're buying an expensive piece where there is a temptation out there for people to forge it, you have to sort of do your own due diligence on it and make sure you don't spend money that you shouldn't have, and be aware of all the pitfalls that come with some of the signed items and some of the counterfeited cards. But for the most part, if you're buying something that's authenticated by one of the big authenticators, you're feeling a lot safer now than you did maybe 20, 25 years ago.
Rich, thanks for the information. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Enjoy the rest of the holidays, and we'll talk with you soon on NBC Sports Radio.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Rich Miller from Sports Collectors Daily. Interesting story there. And since I don't have kids, this is going to sound creepy, I'm out of touch with what the kids are doing. Does anybody still collect baseball cards? I would assume the industry's there from a standpoint of investing. But, I'll take it back. When I was growing up in the early 1980s, no. In a pre-internet world with 25 cable channels. Now, I'm old enough to remember when we only had the 6, black and white, and UHF, but I won't take you back to 1977. But with limited sports entertainment options, you had to amuse yourself. So baseball cards weren't that fascinating, and you flip them and trade them and try to win more. And yes, of course, because all of us had those Huck Finn lives hanging out with Tom Sawyer, you put them in your baseball in the spokes as well, that whole thing. But I do remember in the early 1980s when baseball memorabilia took off, and the Honus Wagner card, of course, became the holy grail in that industry. I just don't know. You used to see them in strip malls, too, especially here in Southern California, sports memorabilia shops that could stay open just if they could sell enough quality classic baseball cards. I think that trend has ended, but correct me at 855-323-4622. 855-323-4NBC. It's all about the internet, right? I think it's a fad, though. I think this whole thing is going to go away. USC scored another touchdown, leading Fresno State 21-6. About 9 minutes to go in the first half. It's 38-30 now. Washington State on top of Colorado State in the New Mexico Bowl. That game in the third quarter. And if you need the details, I'm sure you're fully abreast of what's going on in bowl season. It's USC and Fresno State in the vaunted Las Vegas Bowl. We'll keep you updated as to what is going on in Nevada. 855-323-4622 is the number to call. In the final hour of the program, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get you set for one of the more intriguing matchups looming tomorrow in the NFL. Chiefs taking on the Colts. Could be a playoff preview. Those teams could meet round one of the postseason. We'll chat with Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star. And we'll also talk to one of the best information guys in NFL coverage when we chat with Howard Balzer, longtime observer of the league. Howard works for Sports Exchange. We'll always take time for your phone calls as well at 855-323-4622. 855-323-4NBC. And coming up, we're going to log on to the World Wide Weber. A lot of pressure for my producer, Jason, as he's now going to pepper me with questions. And he knows if I don't like it, I just yell back at him. It's an abusive relationship, but it's something that we have an understanding, like Ike and Tina. No, we just kidding. Coming up, that is directly ahead here on NBC Sports Radio and the NBC Sports